Okay, so recently I've been taking another look back at this sovereign citizenship, the whole free man movement thing, just to see where it's at because I haven't looked in on it in a long while. This is kind of interesting right here. I just came across this website. It's like this Police One or something like that, and this is ridiculous. Some article on how police should deal with sovereign citizens. And it's right off the bat, it's really fucking retarded and contradicting. Says the threat to officer safety posed by sovereign citizens is well known. Okay, is it? Because what? Because one event. So it says one must look no further than the tragic deaths of Sergeant Brandon Potter and Officer Bill Evans of the West Memphis Police Department in order to understand the risk of spontaneous violence from from self-proclaimed sovereign citizens. First of all, it's really ridiculous because to just simply assume that one isolated incident is a representative of all sovereign citizens. I mean, that's the same kind of faulty argument that gets people into so many issues with race and sex and all this stuff. It's like one faulty fucking argument is not enough to support, that the entire movement is a violent and, untrustworthy movement. These people could have been staged. These people could have been, they probably weren't even actual sovereign citizens. It's like someone declaring they're a Christian going around chopping people's fucking heads off or doing some other fucking evil shit. It's like, oh, I'm a Christian. I go home at night and I ask God for forgiveness, but in the morning I wake up and I rape kids. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So you're not actually a Christian. But then people would take that so literally and say, oh, well, he's a Christian. And so, that doesn't make any sense. You could have fake people who want to purposely kill the movement or who want to take advantage of the movement to do illegal activities and just claim that they're sovereign citizens. They're probably criminals. They probably have nothing to do with the movement. So it's a biased and contradictory thing. Yes, it's sad and unfortunate. Officers were killed because of sovereign citizens. But they could have been criminals. It could have been anybody claiming sovereign citizenship to get away with this or to put the blame on an entire movement instead of being looked at directly. Okay? I guarantee you it was some, people, plus the government, anybody who wants to take down the movement could have added these two Joe Schmoes or any of these fucking two, whatever. I don't know how many people were involved in the killing, but any of these people, they could have, just like they do with protests, just like they do with anything else. They always put the certain people in there who are paid, who are funded to go and cause chaos, to make things look bad. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't mean that, oh, proceed with caution. All sovereign citizens are fucking, look out for them because one event where, two officers, God rest them, were killed. That's just ridiculous, to say the least. That's just stupid, okay? So let's move on. So then this article, this guy says, strongly suggest to any officer encountering a suspected sovereign citizen to proceed with extreme caution. What does that mean? You ever seen a video of an officer employing extreme caution? Do you think that it actually requires calmness or caution? No. Because the next thing he says is employing all necessary tactical officer safety precautions. So what would tactical officer safety precautions look like in a functional test? What does the officer grab his gun, hold on to his gun, they take a defensive position? What is a tactical response that is trained in consider tactical officer safety precautions? I've seen many training videos. I've even trained, in many different styles and disciplines myself. I've seen a lot of examples where officers approach a suspect or even someone who is suspected of being a suspect, in a crime, wanted in a crime or something, whether it's a case of mistaken identity or whatever. Usually I've seen videos where officers who just are stopping someone take things way, way out of control and they, employ their tactical training and it looks very offensive. Even though it's a defensive position, it's defensive to them, which means it puts the innocent person or the potential innocent person, the victim, the other person on the other end, whether they're guilty or innocent, doesn't matter. It puts them on what? Offensive. Now they're nervous. And nervous, it's like when you're nervous in front of an officer, it's like the whole idea of being nervous in front of a dog or a bee. It's going to amplify the symptoms. It's going to amplify the effects, okay? They're going to pick up on it, and it's going to make them more keen to wanting to, push and test your limits before, the conversation or before anything even begins. So he's saying that it would be best for officers at the moment they encounter someone they suspect, mind you, suspect of being a sovereign citizen. How can you know that? What does a sovereign citizen look different? What does a sovereign citizen look like? So again, right there's profiling. This is an officer of the law, and you can read within this text, he's admitting that it's okay to profile, number one, and second, it's okay to respond to a supposed threat, to a suspected threat. So reasonable suspicion. This is before a crime has been committed. Reasonable suspicion before a consensual or non-consensual conversation has even been engaged. He is saying that it's also acceptable that after you've, number one, profiled and suspected a human being of being a sovereign citizen, then to take precautions in a tactical manner. That to employ tactical officer safety precautions. Which means before words are exchanged, you're going to take a defensive position on, open the car door, and take a defensive position behind the door and say, hey, you stop. What does that mean? So this officer is admitting that in order to proceed with caution against a suspected sovereign citizen, he is saying that profiling is okay to, first of all, suspect someone of being to be a self-proclaimed sovereign citizen, which I don't know how you'd be able to identify that. And second, he also then says to employ necessary tactical officer safety precautions. Those two things right there, in my personal opinion, that's jumping the gun. Literally and figuratively speaking, that is jumping the gun. So that's wrong. Now let's continue. You probably continued beyond because I only have this page up. I don't make flashy videos. I care to speak my mind, and so, deal with it. One of the first things to recognize that a sovereign citizen is likely to be argumentative. So again, just says that. That's assumed. He's automatically stating that, one of the first things to recognize is that they're likely to be argumentative. Okay, we're likely to be argumentative. So we're going to immediately, you can't state something like that. It's just, that's pure assumption that, a lot of times, and I'm going to get into the reason why a lot of this is assumption and why a lot of this is, doublespeak, unnecessary, or propagandized, speaking, categorization of these, of sovereign citizens. And I'm going to get into a few examples as to why that is, in the defense of what that means to be a sovereign citizen. And I guess maybe I'll do it right now. That if you're a true sovereign citizens, all they want is peace. And in my opinion, I declare myself a sovereign citizen, and all I want is peace. You know what I'm saying? All I want is peace and my privacy and my freedoms as given. And I'm going to get into something else here. Let me continue reading, okay? So they may proclaim themselves citizens, blah, 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 right from the beginning, which, yeah, is fine. That's what they should do. If you have a gun on you and the officer stops you, as part of, proper procedure in owning a firearm legally is to declare that you are carrying a firearm, concealed or non-concealed, and other things. When an officer stops you, it is by law one of the first things that you do to respond to an officer stopping you for any reason is to declare yourself, or declare, so why is that an issue? He says, remember, he doesn't say declare, he says proclaim. Proclaim is a very different word. That's a very powerful word. Proclaim, profound, right? It's, in conjunction with, they may likely be argumentative and go right on to saying they may proclaim. So the wording here is very, specific on making it sound like sovereign citizens are going to be all up in your face, very loud, very adamant about, oh, I'm a sovereign citizen, get away, and very just kind of, that's not the case. And if that is the case, then they're not a real sovereign citizen, and they're not following the free man movement as it, in my opinion, is truly intended. I think there's been a lot of misconceptions within the free man movement, and I think there's been a lot of people trying to stop it. Obviously, the greatest power trying to stop and halt the free man movement is the goddamn Corporation of America to begin with. Every law, every rule, every regulation, the Federal Reserve, the government, every institution, education system, and anybody who considers himself a gun shooting, beer drinking, truck driving, flag waving, patriotic American would probably be against this whole idea of sovereign citizenship. So there's a lot of people willing to stop the movement, and I'm sure there's a lot of illegitimate, illegal, people out there, involved in, racial groups or political protesting groups, or just flat out gang members or criminals who'd probably want to get in on the movement to exploit the movement and use its growing, knowledge of freedom and whatever to get out of situations. So this movement right off the bat is going to have a lot of enemies. So it's not, it shouldn't be easy for someone to just then say, oh, well, it's a bunch of shit, you know what I mean? And then, not forgive those who are probably full of misconceptions, who are probably fully mistaken on what the initial impact of the movement was all about, what the intent is. You know what I'm saying? To just be a free man on the land. To just be that's it. That's to be a free man, just be alive and enjoy the life that God, it, he, her, it, them, they, whatever provided you, and use the land as the land provided you. That's freedom. You know what I'm saying? And so going into what this guy says next, I'm gonna further explain why that is. So he says they may question your authority or where you derive your jurisdiction, and inform you that they do not believe in the United States Constitution or any other illegitimate government documents from which police powers are derived. No. Okay, hold on. Now let me, first of all, see, they'll do that. They'll just use that thing, put it in there, and make it, the Constitution, really? Okay, the free, and say, and just to say, they, using that one and then say illegitimate government documents, it's just that tactic of misinformation here. Why would the free man movement be against the Constitution? Are they? Because I don't remember through the research, I've seen about it, going against the Constitution. Okay? Why? Why would they be fucking against the Constitution? The Constitution states as follows. I could have probably just pulled it up online. Okay, I thought I had the Constitution handy. I don't. I'd have to get it out. It's some other part of the house. But the Constitution, if I'm correct, one of the first statements is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's basically the entirety of the free man movement. That everything the free man movement is founded upon, the whole movement itself, is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To be a free man on the land, born free, proud to be, is to be alive and to pursue your God-given unalienable rights, which are stated in the Bill of Rights. I have the Bill of Rights on hand. The Bill of Rights is everything from the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press. Second Amendment, as we all know, is the freedom to bear arms, the right to carry, you know what I'm saying? The right to defend yourself against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. So again, domestic, right? So there's just so much. You can go on and on. The amendments about, government, agents of the government, not, they must have consent. The whole free man movement is about consent and about consent in the government and not giving consent and the whole straw man identity. So this guy is going to claim that, and again, this is for uneducated people. Again, an officer speaking to other officers, and just by stating this one line here, by throwing that in there, make it seem like, oh, we're against the Constitution, when that's not the case. That's contradicting. It's simply the opposite. We don't see the Constitution as being an illegitimate, document, nor do we see the Bill of Rights or any of the, early, things. Most of our forefathers, or whatever you want to call them, the presidents, have spoken out against a lot of this shit that is the very reason this free man movement exists today. The Federal Reserve Bank and private equity and income tax and, just basically taxation and slavery and, corporation, right? It's just so many different things. Now, I might have a few things mixed up. I'm not saying that it was all good. I know that. There's a lot of other research involved in, deciphering and decoding, the truth about this country. Personally, I believe that it's all been designed to fail. You know, it's all been designed to fail. I think that every document, regardless, has all been specifically worded and designed to fail from the beginning to set our nation up as what it is today, the military-industrial complex corporation of the United States of America, which will usher in the New World Order. Now, I'm running on time here, and I didn't get that far to begin with because I stopped here, which is when I started recording